Alright, so today I'm going to do a little bit of an old-fashioned preview where I am actually going to preview all 13 games that's going to be happening in match week number 7. And the reason why I decided to do that is because tomorrow I am going to be going to Salt Lake City and I am going to be going there to watch Minnesota take on RSL at Rio Tinto Stadium tomorrow. And basically, since I'm going to be there and also after that I'm going to be going to LA to see some of my friends there, and I'll probably be there for a couple of days. That means I do not have times in terms of doing the preview tomorrow. And usually for this season, I usually do the preview for the Sunday game on Saturday. But as I'm going to be going to Salt Lake City tomorrow, I won't have that time in terms of doing the preview of the Sunday games, and hence that's why I decided to kind of combine this preview into one part. And also, doing my trip this weekend, I am going to try my best to watch as much of these games as possible. Obviously, since I'm not going to have Wi-Fi throughout most of my trip, except if I'm actually at the hotel, or maybe even at or a restaurant, or even at the stadium. Most likely I'm going to have to use my data to watch some of these games, and it's not a big issue in terms of using my data to watch some of these games, but sometimes it does stutter when I, of course, watch some of these games on my data. So yeah, it's going to be a little bit tough in terms of trying to keep track of that. And one last thing, since this weekend is also Champions League final weekend, and it happens to be one of the team that is in the Champions League, is actually the team I dearly root for, which is Chelsea. And fun fact for you, Chelsea is actually the first team that I actually root for in sports, and that I actually root for Chelsea and been a fan of the team ever since 2008, and right around that time when they, of course, made the run to their first ever Champions League final appearance against Manchester United. And then I'll basically just kind of stop there because I don't want to really talk about what happened in that Champions League final. That means that I'll probably will not be able to watch this game, and maybe the latter part of this game, depending on if the Champions League final does go into extra time. So yeah, what I'll probably do is just watch some of the highlights of those games. And then also for the review of this week, I'm gonna try my best to do the review at a hotel. I already got a mini travel boards that I'm gonna be bringing to, and this mini travel board is not gonna be like this one where it's actually relatively small. And what I'll probably do with the review is I'll just kind of put up the score, and I'll basically read all the notes that I usually put here on the board, but I'll basically read it from my notebook that I use to take notes of these games, and that's basically how the review is going to do. But there's no guarantee that could potentially happen because, again, I'm going to be using hotel Wi-Fi, and if you know about hotel Wi-Fi, yeah, they tends to not be very good and tends to be very, very slow. But with that being said, let us actually get into the first game of this 13-game action. There's going to be 11 games that's going to be happening on Saturday, and there's going to be 2 that's going to be happening on Sunday. There's a lot of day games for this week's on Saturday. In fact, I think 7 of the 11 games that is going to be happening tomorrow is going to be day game. And it all starts with the Chicago Fire taking on Montreal, as this game will start at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff time will be 12:08 p.m. local time, so it's a lunchtime kickoff at Soldier Field in this game. The Fire, of course, they finally snapped their 4-game losing streak and won 1-0 against Miami at home in their last game to improve their record to a pretty bad 1-4 record, but it's better than not having a win so far this season. Well, for Montreal, yeah, they definitely suffer an embarrassing 2-1 loss to FC Cincinnati, and whereas Chicago got their first win, Montreal basically handed Cincinnati their first win of the season, and they lost 2-1 to them at home, and now their record is now at 2-2-3. Last 5 head-to-head between both of these teams, it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams last time, before the Fire did win 3-2 against Montreal. Then Montreal did win 1-0 against the Fire, 2-1 against the Fire again, before Chicago did win 1-0 against Montreal. So anytime when this game is at Montreal, anytime when this game is in Chicago, then Chicago most likely is going to win. But anytime when this game is in Montreal, most likely Montreal is going to win. But I feel like this is also going to be a game where, I've started seeing patterns where a lot of these matinee games, especially these early games, they tend to start off relatively slow and tends to not be as high scoring as maybe you see some of the nightcap action. Something tells me that's going to be the same case in this one, because these two teams, they tend to struggle in terms of going forward, and I won't be surprised this could potentially be a low scoring kind of game. Now, that being said, every time I of course said that, maybe the opposite is going to happen. But either way, moving on into the next match is going to be the Red Bulls versus Orlando City, which will also start at the same time as the Chicago Fire taking on Montreal at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific time. But the actual kickoff time will be 1:08 p.m. local time. The Red Bulls, of course, they lost 2-1 to New England away in their last match, as their record is now 2-0-4. While for Orlando City, they're one of the 3 teams to have yet to suffer a loss, as they, of course, got a win in their last game. And I'm kind of having a brain fart moment here, and I kind of forgot who Orlando City, of course, was. Oh, Toronto is the team that they, of course, won. They won 1-0 against them at home to improve their record to 3-3-0. Last 5 head-to-head between both of these teams, it's been pretty low scoring action in these last 5 head-to-head, except for that one occurrence where Orlando did win 3-1 against the Red Bulls. But the other one, it's been a 1-1 draw between both of these teams the last time they met. Then it was a 1-0 win for the Red Bulls on the road against Orlando City. Then Orlando basically turned the favor to the Red Bulls by winning 1-0 on the road when they faced the Red Bulls. And then, of course, the Red Bulls did the same thing again, returned the favor, and win 1-0 against Orlando City. But either way, it's been these kind of matchup has been kind of low scoring, and again, this might be another game that it could be a low scoring affair, because both of these teams tends to not be a team that scores a ton of goals. Although one team, even though they have had problems in terms of scoring goals, that is Orlando City, their defense has been very good this season. And, for the Red Bulls, knowing the fact that they struggle in terms of scoring goals, it's going to be tough for them to try to break out against that really stingy Orlando City defense. And again, I feel like this could be another one of those games like the last 5 head-to-head meeting, where maybe one goal is going to be enough to determine who, of course, would win this game. Now, moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be FC Cincinnati versus New England. So this is going to be a battle between the team that is currently dead last in the Eastern Conference versus the team that is currently at the top of the table. And usually when you see these kind of matchup, I know people might say, well, the team at the top of the table is going to easily win, right? Well, not exactly. We've seen this before where it's pretty much first place versus last place, and I have seen before where teams that is currently dead last in the standings and they face against the best team in their conference and they pull off an upset in that. And FC Cincinnati, there's just something tells me that they can potentially do it, because they're going to be at home in this game, their second home game at TQL Stadium. And that, they, even though they are dead last in the Eastern Conference, they finally got their first win of the season against Montreal, as they won 2-1 on the road in that game. And while New England, they of course are at the top of the standings after winning 2-1 against the Red Bulls. By the way, the record for both of these teams, for Cincinnati, it's a 1-1-3 record, while for New England, it's a 4-2-1 record coming into this game. This game will start at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff will be 3:08 p.m. local time. Last 2 head-to-head between both of these teams, because they only met each other twice before this game. Well, believe it or not, the last matchup, the last matchup, it was New England winning 2-0 against FC Cincinnati on the road. But believe it or not, FC Cincinnati has actually tasted success against New England before. They actually won 2-0 on the road against the Revs, and I think that was back in the first year when they were I think this was the first road win that they got that season, and that's when, in the early part of the season, when FC Cincinnati definitely showed some promising and didn't show the sign of what would later to becoming one of the worst team or one of the worst expansion side we have ever seen in league history. And also that was during the time when New England was in a very, very turmoil kind of situation. But again, Cincinnati, something tells me they might pull the upset in this game, because they must be feeling a lot of confidence after that big win against Montreal on the road and getting that monkey off their back. And now they, of course, playing their second game at TQL Stadium. And I know the first game, it didn't quite work out for them, but something tells me if they can show that same resilience in this game against New England, then something tells me they can maybe pull off an upset in this game. And again, it's very important for FC Cincinnati. You know, as bad as they have looked in these first couple of games, and you know, these first couple of games they kind of look like that same teams that win the Wooden Spoon 2 years to start their life in MLS. If they can potentially not do that and maybe meet their goal this season, which is being a respectable MLS team, they need to start to make TKO Stadium like a fortress, and hopefully this might be the beginning where they can maybe get their first ever home wins and the first of what could be many home wins this season at their brand new stadium. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Columbus versus Toronto. So Columbus, they currently have a record of 2-2-2, while TFC has a record of 1-2-3. This game also starts at 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff time will be also 3:08 p.m. local time. Columbus, of course, won 2-1 against NYCFC away, as that was kind of the Lucas Zarian late show of him scoring 2 amazing free kick goals. Well, 1 amazing free kick goal and 1 that was pretty much gifted because of a howler that Sean Johnson committed. But obviously Columbus fans won't care. They still want that one and actually get their first road win in almost a year and a half. While for TFC, they of course lost 1-0 to Orlando City away in their last match, and in the last 5 head-to-head, it was TFC winning 2-0 against Columbus. Then they also won against the Crew 3-1. Oh, also that 2-0 win against Columbus earlier that Toronto of course had, that actually was a matchup it didn't happen been a long time ago. And also this week we're starting to see some matchup where this is actually the second time that both of these teams were the second time that these matchup has happened this season, as some of those early matchup is starting to kind of recurring as we get deeper into the season. But going back to this, you know, TFC did win 1-0 against Columbus. It was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a 3-3 draw between both of these teams. So TFC no doubt have a very good record against Columbus, and they're actually unbeaten against Columbus in their last 5 head-to-head matchup. But for TFC this week, it has been a very turmoil kind of week for them, and that, you know, we heard about this morning how Jefferson Soteldo, their big money signings from a couple of weeks ago, he might be going on to the IR list and might have suffered a mysterious injury, and that he won't be available in this game against Columbus, or at least that's what I heard in terms of the report. And then obviously the big story with TFC that really is the reason why they had a turmoil kind of week is that Jozy Altidore looks like he could be on his way out of TFC. He is actually not in the first team anymore after apparently there seems to be some disagreement between him and Chris Armas. And I think this goes back to that Orlando City game when Jozy Altidore was subbed off during that game, and Jozy Altidore was definitely not happy. The fact that he was subbed off when his team was down 1-0, and he definitely shared some choice words to Chris Armas as he went off the pitch, and therefore now it seems like, you know, Jozy Altidore is clearly in the doghouse of Chris Armas and pretty much joined Quentin Westbrook in terms of that spot. But, you know, again, you know, I have heard a lot of rumors that it seems like Jozy Altidore potentially is going to move on from TFC, and in some way it's kind of true because there's always been a rumor that maybe Jozy Altidore time with TFC is coming to an end. Heck, last season we thought that was it for him with Toronto. I thought last season, or many people thought last season was the time when both of them basically go their separate ways. But with how this situation has gone on, and the fact that there's been rumors that he is thinking about leaving TFC to go to another team, it seems like that could be the case where we could actually see Jozy Altidore, you know, that last game that he of course played where he come off in that game, that might be the last time that we see Jozy Altidore in a Toronto FC jersey. And it's such a shame that is the way that his time with TFC ended, because, you know, I feel like, you know, I know he's been one of the most polarized player in the league, and also during his time with the U.S. men's national team, but he is just such a legendary player for TFC, and I feel like he's going to be right on the same rank as Sebastian Giovinco in TFC, and I do feel like they're not giving enough respect in terms of what he has done with this team, and he's been part of that main core that this team has won a lot of championship and have been regularly becoming the best team in the league for the past couple of years. But yeah, that is kind of the way it's gonna end it. It's definitely kind of in a bittersweet kind of moment, but I really think that this seems like it could be the case where maybe Jozy Altidore time with TFC is going to come to an end, and hence this is why maybe when they did sign Dom Dwyer a couple of weeks ago, maybe this signing does now make a little bit more sense, because I remember when they signed Dom Dwyer and people were thinking, what in the world they're thinking? Like, they already have enough depth in terms of the attack. Why do they need to add another player that has been kind of washed up in the league for the past couple of seasons? Well, that's because what if Jozy Altidore does leave? And if he does leave, then you only got Ayo Akinyola in that number 9 position, and most likely, if Altidore does leave, Dom Dwyer will be promoted as the second choice striker. And again, we'll see what's going to happen with this, but it just feels like this might be the end of Jozy Altidore, his time with TFC, and it's just sad that this, of course, is the way how it ended. But in terms of this match alone, obviously I think Columbus has to take advantage of this with how much turmoil that TFC has suffered this week, and especially coming off of a big road win. They're looking to try to get themselves back to Supporters Shield or not Supporters Shield, but MLS Cup winner kind of form, as they haven't really looked like a team that had looked anything as good as last season. And you could maybe even say in some way they're suffering from a bit of an MLS Cup hangover in these first couple of weeks, but hopefully they could potentially bounce back, and this is a big opportunity against a team that is definitely not had its best week, not only in the last game losing to Orlando City, but also off the field situation. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Atlanta versus Nashville. Now, this game is going to start at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff is 3:38 p.m. local time, and you're thinking, oh, this game is going to be on Twitter, and it's going to be on national television, which makes sense, because anytime when Atlanta play against Nashville, you know that this is going to have to be on national television, because there seems to be a rivalry that is going on with both of these teams. But no, instead, this is not on national television. Talking about Twitter this week, well, unfortunately, this is just one of those weeks where it seems like the MLS gods are going to punish us by basically having not just one Twitter game, but 2 Twitter games that is going to happen, and it's going to be back-to-back in terms of those Twitter game, which the next one between LAFC and NYCFC being on Twitter, and then the Cali Clasico between the Galaxy and the Quakes follow up that. So yeah, this game of course is not on Twitter, even though the kickoff time of this game is usually right around the window where Twitter games basically are played. But coming into this game, Atlanta, of course, they did something that not a lot of teams were able to do this season, which is get a point against the Seattle Sounders away to improve their record to 2-3-1. While for Nashville, they're one of the 3 teams to have yet to lose this season, and they actually won their last match against Austin FC to improve their record to 2-4-0. Last 3 head-to-head meeting between both of these teams, it was Nashville winning 4-2 against Atlanta United in the last match, but then Atlanta did win 2-0 against Nashville, and then the first matchup between both of these teams, which was the first ever match for Nashville SC in their MLS club history, they of course lost 2-1 to Atlanta United, but we know that win really actually cost Atlanta United's season, because that was also the game when Josef Martinez, of course, went down with a torn ACL, and that could also be an interesting narrative heading into this game to see how Josef Martinez is going to do, knowing the fact that this is the game and this is the opponent that he faced that unfortunately suffered that torn ACL. But either way, I'm actually very interested to see how this game is going to go, because both of these teams have been really, well, I wouldn't say they have been decent so far this season, but they definitely have looked tough to beat, and it's always, as I said, very interesting whenever both of these teams, of course, meet against each other, and it's just such an unfortunate thing that this is not on national television. And also, as I mentioned, depending on if the Champions League final does go to extra time or in penalties, I might not actually catch maybe the last 30 minutes of this match. But now moving on into the last game on this board, and really the last game in terms of the day game action, is LAFC versus NYCFC, which this game is going to be starting at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff will be 2:08 p.m. local time. Both of these teams coming into this game with a 2-2-2 record. LAFC, of course, won 3-1 against Colorado at home, while NYCFC, they did lose 2-1 against Columbus at home. And in terms of the last two head-to-head matchup, it was NYCFC drawing 2-2 against LAFC. Then it was a 2-2 draw between LAFC versus NYCFC. And you know what? I'm just going to call this the 2 derby, or maybe the Dos Classico, because it seemed like 2 is kind of the main storyline in this, with, you know, both of these teams, their record is exactly at 2 apiece in terms of the win, draw, and loss ratio. And also with the way that since this is their third meeting between both of them, they've already played two matchup, and also those 2 matchup tends to be 2 draw. But, you know, in terms of looking at this actual game, I think this could also be a very interesting game, and especially for LAFC, I really think this is the first big test that they had ever since they, of course, lost their first couple of games against the Sounders, where they might be facing a very good opponent. And, you know, for LAFC, you know, I mentioned in the last game, they, of course, oh, by the way, they actually did not win 3-1 against Colorado. They actually won 2-1 against Colorado in that game, so that's actually a bit of a mistake that I made there on that part. And actually, both of these teams were coming up with 2-1 result, but really on the opposite end. But yeah, you know, for LAFC, you know, they did get that much needed victory against the Rapids, but that was definitely not a game that is going to convince a lot of people that LAFC is truly back. And I know the media are basically hyping and say that they are truly back after they finally got a much deserved win, but, you know, if they want to show that they are truly back, and they are truly back to being could potentially be an MLS Cup contender, they definitely need to win this game and potentially go on a run. Because if they can potentially go on a run, then yeah, I think it will. I feel like we just have to kind of justify in terms of the hype that this team, of course, always get from the media. And in some way, I guess a lot of people kind of don't want that happen, because they want to continue to make that meme saying that, oh, looks like the media basically are hyping LAFC again, even though they have one of the worst record in the league right now. But that being said, I am now going to switch boards and look at the nightcap action from the Saturday action. Alright, so the first game of the nightcap action is going to be none other than the Cali Classico between the Galaxy and the San Jose Earthquakes. And technically, this is not really a nightcap action game, because even though this game starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, the actual kickoff time is 4:02 p.m. local time. And that, you know, if you live in the West Coast and live in LA, this is still going to be late afternoon. But if you live in the East Coast, then yeah, maybe you can call this kind of a nightcap action, because it's going to be kicking off in terms of these 5 games that's going to be happening on Saturday night. And also, by the way, I am wearing my San Jose Earthquakes Parley jersey, and this week pretty much every single team will be wearing their Parley jersey. And, you know, this one, I actually got it from the team store last week, and I think it costs $100 to get this Parley jersey, although, you know, it actually only cost me about $80 before tax, because since I'm a season ticket holder of the Quakes, and they have a 20% merchandise discounts if you're a season tickets holder, that's why I got $20 off in terms of this jersey. But even though it was relatively expensive to buy this, I do kind of like this jersey. And in some way, I feel like the Quakes, if they were ever going to kind of design a really nice away jersey, this is the one that I think looks really nice, and definitely look much better than the past couple of Quakes away jerseys that I've seen the team basically release. But either way, going back to this game in the Cali Classico, as I mentioned, it will start at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will be 4:02 p.m. local time. And unfortunately, this is the second game of the doubleheader that is going to be on Twitter. The Galaxy, of course, they did have their 3-game winning streak come to an end by losing 3-0 to the Portland Timbers away. Remember, that was the game when Derek Williams made that horror tackle on Andy Polo. And, you know, so far, we still haven't heard anything from Disco in terms of any additional suspension that Derek Williams basically will receive. But I have a feeling it's probably going to be next week that they're going to announce, because knowing Disco, they usually announce like additional game suspension right before when a player is about to available, almost kind of like a double whammy in terms of that, where they feel like, yeah, you thought that you're about to be able to get back on the field after serving that 1-game suspension. Well, here's another game suspension for you to serve because of what you did in the last game. And also, speaking of Derek Williams, I'm glad that the Galaxy did address on their main page talking about the situation that Derek Williams had to deal with all those racial remark and also those death threats that has come toward his way because of that horror tackle. And again, as bad as that horror tackle is that he put on Andy Polo, that should not be used as an excuse to use these racial remarks and even put some death threats toward a player, because at the end of the day, people gotta remember, this is just a game. Like, soccer is just a game. It's not something that you really need to take it too personally. And I just feel like there are just some people just take this way too personally. And I also said kind of will just requote what I said in the preview, where I get that some fans are very passionate about this sports, but there's one thing being passionate, and then there's the other of just crossing the lines, as what you see with some of these people making those racial remark and even put some death threats on Derek Williams. And I'm just glad the Galaxy, of course, are addressing this, and they said they have zero tolerance in terms of this situation, and they will definitely help Derek Williams get through this tough time that he's currently dealing with right now. But going back to this, the Quakes, they of course are definitely not coming into this Cali Clasico in good form at all. In fact, they of course have lost 3 in a row coming into this game. But when you look at the last 5 head-to-head Cali Clasico, the Quakes actually have been pretty much dominating the last 5 head-to-head matchup. They did win 4-0 against the Galaxy on the road, which that was one of the biggest victories that I've seen the Quakes have been able to get on the road and get a win on the road. Before that, it was a 2-1 win against the Galaxy at home. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams. The Galaxy did win 3-2 against the Quakes, but then the Quakes, of course, won 3-1 on the road against the LA Galaxy. But you got to keep in mind, this is a Galaxy team that is completely different than the one that the Quakes faced last season, and definitely a much stronger Galaxy team. And again, knowing the fact that the Quakes are really struggling right now, I just feel like the only ways that they can maybe snap out of this little funk that they're in is to get a victory against the Galaxy, and I'm pretty sure the players are going to be up for it. Like, honestly, anytime when there's a rivalry game, and I know this kind of sounds like a cliche, but it's kind of true, where, anytime when there's a rivalry game, losing streak or winning streak or even head-to-head record pretty much just goes out the window, because even if you're a team that could be like the worst team in the league and you're about to face your rival, there's always a chance that you can of course get a win, because this game does mean a lot to the players, and especially means a lot to the Quakes fan base, because a lot of Quakes fans do not like the Galaxy whatsoever, and they definitely want their play to give not just 100% but 110%, because of how big this rivalry means to the Quakes and also to the Quakes fan base. But now, moving on into the next match, is going to be Inter Miami taking on DC United. So this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff will be not until 8:08 p.m. local time. For Inter Miami, they of course lost 1-0 to Chicago on the road, while for DC, they also lost 1-0 as they lost to the Union at home in that game. And there's only been one meeting between both of these teams, and it was actually the second game of Inter Miami time in MLS in their expansion year, where they lost 2-1 against DC United. I remember that was the game where Miami thought that they were up 2-0 in that game, and it was Lewis Morgan that scored that second goal. But then they go to VAR and find out that there was actually a foul before that goal, and actually Roman Torres actually got sent off during that moment. And not only the fact that Inter Miami did not get their 2-0 lead, but now they have a man sent off and they're only leading 1-0, and that basically led to their downfall in terms of that situation. And in some way, I do condemn Inter Miami fans of suffering such a heartbreaking loss in that game, because, as a Quakes fan, I've been through that situation before. Remember that game between the Quakes and Atlanta, where the Quakes looked like they were up 4-1, and then they had to call back that goal, and then of course have to give a penalty to Atlanta because there was a foul happening before the goal, of course, was scored, and this was kind of like the same sequence of play. Yeah, I've been there before, and I'm pretty sure Inter Miami definitely would want to have some revenge in terms of that. I don't know if a lot of those players have forgot about that day too. Well, knowing the fact that this Inter Miami team kind of has a little bit of a different squad compared to that first game, maybe some of them might not have remembered that, but I'm pretty sure a lot of people, and especially Inter Miami fans, remember that day, and they definitely want to have some revenge after that unfortunate situation in that game against DC United, and they definitely have a chance to do so because, this DC team, I think this DC team so far this season, even though they haven't had a good record to show for, I didn't think they have played badly in their last couple of games. The big issue for DC this season has really been just their finishing. I mean, when you look at how they play and under Hernan Losada, they actually play some very decent soccer, but because of the fact that they don't have anybody to put the ball into the back of the net, and they tends to be one of the worst finishing team in the league, and also probably have one of the highest expectancy goal out of any team, that's why they have a really bad record that they have right now. But we shall see whether or not if they can finally able to find those finishing that they've been lacking for in the first couple of games, or whether or not if Inter Miami, knowing the pattern that they've been going through this season, which every time they have a bad performance, somehow they will just bounce back immediately, and since they had a really bad performance against the Chicago Fire on the road, something tells me they might as well just, looks like they're probably going to have a good performance in this game, and maybe finally getting their first home wins this season. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Sporting KC versus the Houston Dynamo. So this is, of course, the second time that both of these teams are meeting against each other this season. The first meeting, of course, was Houston winning 1-0 against Sporting KC, and we'll get to the last 5 head-to-head in just a moment. But first, Sporting KC did win 3-1 against the Quakes on the road in their last game to improve their record to 4-1-2. And Houston, they also won 2-1 against Vancouver at home to improve their record to 3-2-2. This game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff will not start until 7:38 p.m. local time. In terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, like I said, the last time both of these teams met was just a couple of weeks ago, and it was Houston winning 1-0 against Sporting KC. Before Sporting KC did win 2-1 against the Dynamo on the road, then the Dynamo did win 2-1 against SKC before the Dynamo actually pulled off a very surprising 5-2 thrashing over SKC on the road. And then SKC also did a thrashing against the Dynamo by winning 4-0 against them. So something tells me maybe Houston kind of remember that 4-0 thrashing, and they thought, yeah, I want some revenge for that. So we're going to also put a thrashing against you at home. But even then, as I mentioned before with the Dynamo, they're usually never a team that do well on the road. So to see them score 5 past an SKC side that ends up finishing at the top of the Western Conference by the end of the season, that was definitely a very surprising result. Although that being said, that was also happening in the time when the season was just restarting, and SKC did kind of start off a little bit slow when the MLS is Back tournament is over and in their first couple of games in Phase 2 of the schedule. But either way, coming into this game, both of these teams actually have got off to a decent start, but there's no doubt SKC is going to be the favorites in this game because, in the last couple of games, they definitely have found some rhythm and started to get things going. While Houston, yes, they have had a good start to the season, but all their wins so far has come at home. And on the road, they still have an issue in terms of getting points, and unless they can maybe pull off another big upset like they did last time, I feel like Sporting KC is going to be the favorites coming into this game and pull up the victory in this one. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Colorado versus FC Dallas, which this is also another matchup that is going to be the second one that both of these teams are going to be playing against each other this season. The first meeting was all the way back on opening weekend, where both of these teams drew 0-0 against each other. Colorado, of course, they did lose 2-1 to LAFC away to snap their 3-game winning streak, as their record is now at 3-1-2. While for Dallas, yeah, it's been a miserable run for Dallas in the last couple of games as they have went winless in their 4 games, and in a game in the last one where they clearly should have won against RSL with the way how they absolutely dominate RSL in that game. They only got a 2-2 draw out of that game, and now their record is 1-3-2. Last 5 head-to-head matchup, FC Dallas, of course, as I mentioned, they drew 0-0 against the Rapids. Before Dallas did win 4-1 against the Rapids, but the Rapids did win 3-0 at home against Dallas. Colorado did win 2-1 at home against Dallas before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. So Colorado, they kind of do have a decent record against FC Dallas when this matchup is not at Frisco, but knowing the fact that this matchup is going to be at Dick's Sporting Goods Park, they're going to be fancy their chances in terms of getting a win in this game. And, you know, for Dallas, knowing the fact that they struggle on the road this season, which shouldn't be a big surprise, as that's been the issue that they've been having in the past couple of years, I have a feeling the Rapids are going to be favorites in this one. And this is why that last game against RSL that Dallas played, they absolutely should have won that one. And if they would have won that game, and that their record would have been now at 2-2, it would have been in a more comfortable way, where maybe this is not really a desperation game for them, because right now this team is actually at the bottom of the Western Conference right now. And even though I know this is a team that isn't supposed to be competing near the top part of the Western Conference, this should not be a team that is at the bottom of the Western Conference. Like everybody, I don't think anybody would have predicted that this team, especially of how good Luchi Gonzalez was doing his first year with Dallas, that this team would now find themselves at the bottom of the Western Conference after playing now 6 games into the season. But now, moving on into the last Saturday game of match week number 6, or match week number 7 actually, is none other than the game that I'm going to, which is RSL versus Minnesota, as RSL is going to be coming into this game with a 2-2-1 record, while Minnesota, they of course have a record of 2-0-4. This game will start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific. I don't know why I wrote 7:30 p.m. Pacific time there. Well, technically 7:30 is going to be the time when I do go to Salt Lake City, and that's the time, of course, would be in the stadium to watch this game, but the actual kickoff will actually start at 7:38 p.m. local time. Now, for RSL, you know, as I mentioned, they were very fortunate to get a 2-2 draw against FC Dallas, because they were pretty much being dominated throughout the entire part of the game, and I really felt like David Ochoa really stole that one for RSL to get a point out of that game. Well, for Minnesota, they were the recipients of the bye week sweepstake, as they were the only team to not play last week. And it's kind of weird, the fact that Minnesota has this very, very strange schedule, where the fact that they're going to be playing this game and then they're going to be off for 3 weeks. In fact, you know, this is actually the last week that MLS is going to have a game on the weekend until a couple of weeks later, as we're going to go through a little mini summer break and a mini international break that's going on for these next couple of weeks. And the very next game in MLS is actually not going... Well, after the Sunday game, the very next game in MLS will not start until June 12th. So most of these teams will have a 3-week break, and it's kind of weird for Minnesota to have a week off and then play a game again, and now they have three weeks off again. Now, I'm also worried that might be a way where maybe these players might have some lapse of concentration. And, you know, one thing I actually haven't mentioned throughout this preview is I actually don't know exactly how many players on all these teams are going to be missing players due to international duty, because technically there are going to be some teams that's going to be playing some international friendly as soon as this week. I know the U.S. is going to be playing against Switzerland. And also, by the way, coming into this matchup, I know a lot of people were really looking forward to this one, because they want to see how is Minnesota is going to react against RSL ever since that David Ochoa situation. Well, unfortunately, we're not going to have an answer to that, because David Ochoa is not going to be available in this game for RSL. He was named in the squad to go to Switzerland to play in that friendly that the U.S. are going to be playing in Switzerland. And also, David Ochoa is also named in the Nation League squad. So most likely RSL is going to go with a backup goalkeeper here. So there probably is not going to have any... There's that bad blood that's going to be sharing this game, although maybe that might be the case. Maybe Minnesota might haven't forgot about that, and they'll just kind of on some of their players in terms of reminding them that even David Ochoa is not there. They're still going to remind them that their main goalkeeper should have never disrespect the game and basically kick the ball in the stands. By the way, if Minnesota does win in this game, I wonder, are they going to kick the ball into the stands? Like, I honestly, if they do win this game, that's going to be the first thing I'm going to be seeing how it is. I mean, obviously, if they do win this, and if there is going to be Minnesota United supporter that's going to be at this game, I of course will go there and sing Wonderwall with them. But I'm also going to be very interested to see if Minnesota does win this game, will they decide to kick the ball into the RSL supporter stands, and that's pretty much kind of like a retaliation of what happened in that other game. But either way, in the last 5 head-to-head between both of these teams, it was a 2-1 win that RSL, of course, play, and that, of course, was back in that situation when David Ochoa decided to punt the ball into the stands right after the game is over. Then it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams before Minnesota did win 4-0 against RSL. It was another 0-0 draw between both of these teams, although I think that was back in the MLS's back tournament. And then Minnesota did win 3-1 against RSL at home. And in terms of the overall record that Minnesota has at Rio Tinto Stadium, it's actually not that good. Like, I think they have never won against RSL at Rio Tinto Stadium, but they have a lot of draw against RSL at Rio Tinto Stadium. So something tells me this could potentially be a draw between both of these teams. Although, for Minnesota, from what I also heard, is that some of our new sign that is Adrian Unu and also Franco Fragapani could be available in this game. And also, Debasi is back in training and looks like he's going to be ready to start in this game, which is really great news for this back line, because it feels like we dearly miss Debasi's presence in this back line of how Minnesota has been really poor in the defensive area in the past couple of games. It'll be very interesting to see whether or not if Minnesota can finally get their first win at Rio Tinto Stadium and also get some revenge against RSL after what happened earlier this year. But that being said, I am now going to switch the board one more time to look at the Sunday action, which we're going to have 2 games that's going to be happening tomorrow. So when I mean tomorrow, I meant that if this was Saturday, there is going to be 2 more games that's going to be happening in tomorrow's action. But anyway, looking at both of these Sunday game action, both of these games are actually going to be nightcap games, as the first one will be the Philadelphia Union versus the Portland Timbers. That will kick off at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time, or actually will start at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time, and the actual kickoff is going to be 7:08 p.m. local time, and this game is going to be on FS1. And knowing the fact that last week FS1 did actually decide to kick off on the actual kickoff time that it basically was advertised on the league website, I am going to give them a little bit more trust that the actual kickoff time when the league basically announced is actually the actual kickoff time when FS1 actually broadcasts their game. But although last week I did have to have that annoyance where I did have to kind of show up to watch those games in the actual start time, that is to just double check to see if FS1 is going to trying to lie to me again and actually decide to kick off the game a little bit too early or even a little bit later than the actual kickoff time the league basically announced. But in terms of this game, the Union, they are unbeaten in 4 matches, and their record is now 3-2-2, while for the Portland Timbers, despite the fact that they are injured to hell and that they pretty much has probably the longest list on the IR than any other team in the league, they won 3-0 against the Galaxy at home, and they're actually above the red line with a record of 3-0-3. Now, in terms of the last 5 head-to-head meeting, the Timbers, in terms of this fixture, even though they usually don't play against the Union, and this is one of those rare inter-conference matchups that we're going to have this season, the Timbers have dominated this series. They won 2-1 on the road last time that both of these the last time both of these teams met at Subaru Park. It was the Timbers winning 2-1 against the Union. Then it was the Timbers winning again against the Union on the road, this time by a final score of 3-1. Then the Timbers did win 3-0 against Philly before winning on the road again 3-1 against the Union away. And then the Timbers, of course, win 2-1 against the Philadelphia Union. And again, the Timbers have dominated this matchup. They have won their last 5 matches against the Philadelphia Union, but no doubt this is probably going to be the toughest Union team that the Timbers are get to face, and especially last season, the Union, of course, winning the Supporter Shield, and the Timbers didn't, of course, face them. I have a feeling if the Timbers would have faced against a what would later become a Supporter Shield winning kind of team, maybe that last 5 head-to-head record will be broken, and that the Union might get their first win. Now, that being said, coming into this game, there is a chance that the Union could get their first win against the Timbers in 5 try, and that, knowing the fact that the Timbers are still injured to hell, and that the Union is started to turn things around after that slow start, and they're started to kind of start to see a pattern that a lot of these CCL team, or a lot of these MLS team that was in CCL, where they start slow in their start of the season, but once they got out of CCL or got eliminated in CCL and just focus on league play, then they started to play much better than this. And this is kind of expected, because we knew that a lot of these teams, when they are in the CONCACAF Champions League and also have to focus on MLS play, it was going to be difficult for these teams to try to focus on both of those competitions. I mean, you can really only focus one competition, and a lot of these teams that was in CCL really kind of took their main focus to CCL than MLS. But now, once a lot of these teams are back in MLS and solely focus on MLS, it's no surprise that a lot of these teams have a much better record. But again, it seems like the Timbers, I don't know, they seems to have the Union number, and even though they're injured to hell, and you think the Timbers should be struggling right now with a long list of injury, they're really doing a good job in terms of not only staying afloat, but it seems like they have a next man up kind of mentality where, one of our players is injured, next man up, this player is going to be just as good as the one that just get injured. And I wonder when the Timbers does get some of their starters back into this team. Man, Giovanni Savarese has a huge decision to make. That's actually not a bad problem, and in some way that's a good problem to have if you're Savarese. Once you get a lot of these guys back, and what are you going to do? Are you going to maybe insert them back into the starting 11, or you just stick with the guys that probably kind of took over that spot, and they have looked just as decent as the player that, of course, went down with an injury. But very interesting to see how this matchup is going to be. But now moving on into the last match of week number 7, and really the last match before we have a 2-week break of the MLS season. And that, of course, is the Seattle Sounders versus Austin FC. So, the good news for Austin FC is that technically they have 2 more games left on the road before they finally get to play their first ever home game and open up their brand new stadium, that is Q2 Stadium. But the bad news is there's still 2 more road games, and they're about to potentially lose four games in a row against a Seattle Sounders team that not only has the best record right now in the Western Conference, but also has the best record in MLS with a 5-2-0 record. This game will start at 9:30 p.m. Eastern, 6:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will be 6:38 p.m. local time, and this game also is going to be on FS1. Now, the Sounders, as I mentioned, they still have the best record in MLS, despite the fact that they did take a 1-1 draw against Atlanta, and it was the first time, I think, in 4 games that they, of course, draw points this season. Well, for Austin FC, as I mentioned, it has been kind of a back down to earth moment for this team after getting to such a great start to the season. They have now lost three in a row and are having some issue in terms of scoring goals in their 3 losses that they suffer in a row. And like I said, this could be potentially 4 losses in a row, because anytime when you're the opposition team and you're facing against the Seattle Sounders, especially on the road, your best hope is trying to at least get a point out of this game, because the Sounders, they look like a machine right now, and they're also kind of like an unstoppable force where you can try your best to kind of maintain them, but you're not going to stop this team that is starting to be running away with the league again this season, and are already in prime position of potentially winning the Supporter Shield this year. This, of course, is the first ever meeting between both of these teams, and yeah, we shall see how this first ever meeting is going to be. And, you know, imagine if Austin FC can pull off the upset in this game. Like, if they can pull off the upset, then I'm going to say this is the biggest upset in the season, because I don't think anybody would have thought that Austin FC, with how much they've struggled recently, can beat the best team in the league. And, you know, even though I know from what I've talked about this game, I feel like maybe it's doom and gloom for Austin. You know, I think they need to just believe. And I'm pretty sure Josh Wolf will tell these guys that, you know, anything can happen in MLS. And, you know, you might be facing against the best team in the league, and you're facing them on the road where they've been unbeatable so far at home. But if you can actually play tough on them, and you actually give the effort, which I really think this Austin team have shown this season, even in some of the losses that they suffered this year, this team is going to be this might be a matchup where we might maybe see an upset in this game. And I also mentioned how Austin, I still think this is a very resilient team, and this is a team that if you want to get victory against them, you have to earn it when you play against this new expansion team. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the review of, or not the review, but the preview of all 13 of these games. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these 2 games, and also what do you think of the Saturday action and the 11 games that is going to happen this weekend. As always, let me know in the comments below of all your prediction for all 13 games that's going to be happening in match week number 7. But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I, of course, will see you guys next time.